but I've been hearing lots of good things about her, and from a lot of people. Like, it's weird that we've never met before because we do know a ton of people in common. But then we met, and she's real cool, and I have a huge crush on her. It's like been forming over 48 hours. What do I want to talk about it? It's like, what's cool about it is that Rory and I have talked about it, and we haven't had any fights around it. He's not felt threatened by it at all. I think it's like part and parcel why we're so copacetic a little bit.
Is
because I think my number one need is to feel like somebody's not trying to control me or like restrict me. That makes me want to rebel, and I have a lot of behaviors around that. And I don't know, he's like, he's met her, and he can see why I'm like excited about her or attracted to her, but he also can see how it's one of those like fleeting. We hung out with her last night, and we had a really fun time, and then Rory and I walked home from downtown, and it was like an hour and a half walk, and it was really nice, and we like spent a lot of time talking about it. And he was like, I was like, so you don't feel weird at all about me kind of, it's like obvious that I kind of have a crush on her, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, no, not at all. In fact, I think it's really like cute, and it's kind of exciting to watch you like sort of do a very subtle flirtation with her, and then that's where the part where he was like, and I can kind of tell like this is not a threat. Like, I can see what you're attracted to. And then that led us to this like conversation about like so many different layers of attraction, and like how the thing that why I'm in like such a long-term relationship with Rory is because there is that sort of superficial attraction of like I like his height, and I like his hands, and I like these like kind of first tier physical things, but also I couldn't like be into those things if the personality wasn't interesting too, that I didn't feel like a spark with. But then there's such depth to how I feel about him in terms of what else I'm attracted. Like there's such unique things that are like kind of irreplaceable between us.
Such as?
Just our like shared history in terms of how we were raised, and like kind of how that affected our way of being with other people. There's so much understanding there that's always been such a cornerstone of our relationship or our connection. And both kind of having this really weird need for, like, not weird, but complex, hard to describe, and very particular need for a certain type of security with one person, but then have a certain amount of freedom to be in the world and just spontaneous with other people and interact and not feel like anybody's going to be in trouble for anything. Even if something doesn't feel good for the other person, it doesn't mean you're like in trouble or you're bad or you're wrong in some way. It's very much like the goal, is shared, that it's very much a am I articulating this in a way that makes sense?
I think what I'm understanding is that things have felt like we've been talking about things feeling stuck and a little bit of trapped with Rory, and you're in this experience, you're both surprised and excited at the idea that the thing that you really do love about Rory and that draws you to wanting to be in a relationship with him is happening in this moment.
Yeah.
That you are getting to feel the freedom that you want and the security that you want and the
Yeah.
participation from him in a way that
Yes.
feels good.
And it was sort of the promise at the beginning, and then we had all that weird stuff with Claudia, and
The promise being some openness in your relationship.
yeah, it was sort of like what, before Claudia came into the picture, when with that first like 2 months that we were just sort of doing our thing together, and Claudia and I weren't in conversation at all, and then Claudia came back into the picture, and then he was like, no, don't, y'all have like a toxic dynamic, our shit is way too fresh, I'm coming out of a situation where I've been lied to a ton, I don't have the trust right now, but this is of the moment. And I was like, yeah, all right, of the moment, sure. This is circumstantial to what I see happening between you and this person that I can tell is going to is having a direct impact on how open you are to me. And I was like, yeah, whatever, this is just an excuse, like you aren't going to be open, you are going to be like wanting to control me, this is about wanting to control me, this is about wanting to like have possession of me. And he was always like, no, this is not that
Circumstantial too.
This is about what this relationship has a control over you, and you're not really dealing with that, and when you talk to her you shut down on the other end towards me every time. So no, like I don't want you to go have coffee and like continue to pursue this friendship with this person that I'm starting to get a much clearer picture of like how sort of enmeshed you are in that.
And if I remember correctly, your relationship with Rory really started as you were both coming out of challenging relationships. So he's really familiar with this relationship more so than he can sense a threat that he's not sensing in these other situations.
Yeah. And it, now in time, I've like refused to say I agree. I'm like, I don't disagree with him about it. I mean, he did act a fool, and there was some like stuff that was like very irritating, but I do think he, he had reason to feel the type of insecurity he felt. I didn't like how he dealt with it, so it's like we couldn't even deal with that really at that point, because I was so turned off by how he acted out.
And that has been a bit of a trend in y'all's dynamic, is that the way that Rory acts out is really disruptive for you and really challenging for you. But I'm hearing that this is a feeling like really promising and loving from him, that he's able to stay committed to how he said he wanted to be in a relationship with you.
Yeah. And I also am just understanding him better. Like, a different topic, a couple days ago we were having a conversation, and I was trying to get him to like focus on explaining to me like what he was feeling, because I really couldn't get a grasp for it, because it was just coming through as like a lot of sort of judgment about the situation, and like a lot of, he gets real like kind of high and mighty when he doesn't like something.
What do you mean high and mighty?
Like
judgmental?
It's like judgmental and critical, and sort of, you never really know how he feels.
He's kind of on the attack.
Yeah. And it's all very like mental, but you never like, well, how are you feeling? Like, why are you reacting? It's like he skips over the why and he just is in like reaction. And then pointing fingers and criticizing and stuff. And I was like, when I would see that, I used to get really angry, and I would like say things to almost like poke him, like be inflammatory. But now I'm like, oh, like something is hurting, and he doesn't really know even like how to, he hasn't even slowed down long enough to like figure that out. And so I'll be like, well, what's actually going, then I had a much softer approach, and at the same time was like not just going on the train of being a negative Nelly and like criticizing, kind of tearing this whole thing down. It didn't have to do with us, so it was like a lot easier to do.
To not have a stronger reaction yourself.
Yeah. but in that I was like, oh, I see he's like me. Like he has a really hard time. Sometimes he's so in his head that he's like a hard time finding his feelings and like actually articulating those feelings in a vulnerable way. It's just like too. Is when I would ask him like pointedly, well, what are you feeling? He was like, well, I just think blah 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 blah. And I was like, no, I get what you think, but what are you feeling right now? I don't know.
So he's in kind of like fight or flight, trying to be in logic brain and having a hard time being in his body. So, but it sounds like with a little bit of the release of feeling like you're being controlled, not feeling so much like you're being controlled, that you're able to have more compassion for him.
Yeah.
In the moment, in the crisis moment or the conflict moment.
Yeah, totally. And because in this way, it's like I then get reactive to him and think, because his behaviors are kind of, they're not, they are and aren't. Doesn't matter. I'm just gonna say that I think the reason that I get so reactive is because it reminds me of that kind of like emotionally manipulative stuff that I grew up around. So I think that's why I would poke at it to kind of be like, are you gonna take it all the way?
To test it.
Or is this the end of the road with this? Or is this sort of the beginning of the road that I'm used to? But now I have a lot more trust for him, so I don't really feel the need to do that all the time. But yeah.
So it sounds like some of the excitement is not about the crush as some of it's about the crush and some of it's about the freedom to have the crush.
Yeah.
And the freedom to trust Rory
with that information too.
Yeah.
And to be honest and open with him, and it's nice.
It sounds very
it's so fun.
And it sounds very intimate.
Yeah. It feels like really, and that's what he was saying when we walked. He was like, it's so cool that I'm so excited that we're here. We've talked about wanting to be here, but I feel so close to you, and I don't, it's odd to me to imagine feeling threatened in this way because of just how I understand you so much more, and I see you so much more clearly, and I'm able in that to see our connection with how much you actually do value it. I mean, I'm not always great at expressing that value.
You're working on it.
Yeah.